Hey everyone, what up? Matt Kaiser here. And man, did Nintendo and MonolithSoft just drop an absolute bombshell. Holy shit, I couldn't believe they did that yesterday. Wow. And what they did, my friends, was show a new trailer for Xenoblade 3 Wave 4 DLC. And not only that, but it has an actual name, new characters, a bit more on the story, a new song actually even uploaded, a little bit more on what it actually is, and most of all, a release date, which is, get this, next week. Wow. Just wow, I honestly couldn't believe it. And fun fact, this trailer was released 1 year exactly since the day when Xenoblade 3 base game had its second trailer and showed its release date being pushed up forward instead of being for September 2022 to now July 29, 2022, which honestly that was such a banger move, and oh my god, was that crazy, especially in this world of video games with release dates and stuff. But if you guys like Xenoblade just like me, then by all means hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell notification if you want to get more caught up with Xenoblade content from me, because I am into Xenoblade. I did my personal thoughts on Xenoblade 1 and had Xenoblade 3 as my favorite game of 2022 in my top 5 favorite games of 2022. And not only that, but I also did a collab recently with Yggdrasil about my thoughts and predictions on what Wave 4 was going to be like, and hope to see and not to see, which by the way, go to his channel, subscribe to him as well. He's an amazing YouTuber, especially if you're into Xenoblade specifically. Absolutely amazing guy. I had the privilege to work with him. And now let us get on to details of what Future Redeemed, which is now what's called, is being. Now, Future Redeemed is a prequel to Xenoblade Chronicles 3, featuring a new protagonist, and has an original story that will connect the stories of the three Xenoblade games in a way never before told. Now that is interesting and something I was kind of expecting from the way it's been set up from the Wave 4 teaser, and since the last two expansions, Future Connected for Xenoblade 1 and Torna for Xenoblade 2, obviously were served as sort of bridges in a way, with Future Connected being an epilogue to Xenoblade 1, while Torna was a prequel to Xenoblade 2, so in a way this one is sort of more into Torna territory with being a prequel. And of course, MonolithSoft said that they were trying to aim a similar level to Torna with Wave 4, and I think from what we've seen, they are likely hitting that stride, because I absolutely love Torna, obviously. Now we got a look onto the main characters, and there's a lot of them to go by. So let's start with our main protagonist, the new guy, the guy who looks like Faye from Xenogears, and his name is Matthew. And he's a young man who belongs to a city, and he's part of obviously a group that was dedicated to standing against Mobius. He's straightforward but kind, and searches for his missing sister Niall, and his class has been confirmed to be Ouroboros Knuckles, which, from what we saw from the trailer and actually from what my predictions were, is that he was somehow linked to Ouroboros, and it seems in one footage he was able to punch down the ground and eminent power of Ouroboros into two new characters. So it does seem, instead of using a stone, it seems he does sort of have some powerful Ouroboros that was lifted from his grandfather, who's named Gondor, similar to, Gondor Van Damme from Xenoblade Chronicles 3 base game, of course. We also got another more new characters to go by, one of which being this beautiful sword wielder who mysteriously looks similar to Alvis, and her name is A, the wielder of a thin red sword who fights alongside Matthew. A tends to judge things calmly, which compliments Matthew, who tends to act without thinking quite nicely. And this is probably what many are theorizing, and what we could likely be seeing is the missing console A. Because if you guys haven't seen, my video with Idrisil, is that base Xenoblade really had only like 26 Mobius from like all the way from B to Z, which obviously all of them were representatives of like the level of the alphabet. So this could technically be the missing console A, or somehow it couldn't really be, like it could be somewhat related to Alvis, especially from the way she looks with her hair, her clothes, and the fact that her class is called MonolithSoft, and she has her earrings similar to Alvis's core crystal that he had, his core necklace, Trinity core processor that he had on his neck. We also have two characters being known as Glimmer and Nicole. Glimmer here, this beautiful lady, is an Agnian soldier who fights using a strange cane, and she has a rather strong personality and often takes a harsh tone. Often she acts selfishly as she doesn't accept the truth of the world around her. And if you can see, her Japanese VA is being played by Shino Shimoji, which you guys know is the voice of Pyra and Mithra in Xenoblade 2, and Numa as well, and also Shion from Tales of Arise. Obviously that little bit wasn't entirely relevant, but I just want to point out there. And yeah, she does have a resemblance to Pyra, especially when she has this thing called, she's known as an instrumentalist of flame, actually, which is interesting to say the least. And she does have actually Pyra's core crystal on her chest, and it does seem that she could likely be Pyra and Rex's kid. Who Mithra's kid is, we haven't seen yet. Well, hopefully we will see sometime soon. And the other is Nicole, and he's a Kavesi soldier who's talented in mechanical engineering and usually calm and quiet, but gets fired up when discussing machines. Instead of a blade, he fights with his mechanical arms, and as you can see, he bears a resemblance to Shulk, actually. So this could be likely his son with, I guess, Fiora and Shulk, obviously, which, yeah, honestly, he looks adorable, and I'm glad to hear about that. Obviously, there's another character. This is Nayo, who's a cat girl, another cat girl, which is another win in my book. Obviously, cat girl, Xenoblade Supremacy. And she is Matthew's younger sister, and she has a kind-hearted personality, taking care of the kids in the city. Due to certain events, she goes missing. And yeah, obviously, and the interesting thing about Nayo and Matthew is because their letters are N and M, which is actually very interesting considering on how Noah and Mio had N and M in their initials of the names, and we also had Console N and M, who they're evil counterparts in a sense. So it's actually pretty interesting. And obviously her design's sort of based around, like, say, Beta Nia from Xenoblade 2, of what Nia was originally going to look like. So yeah, that's pretty good. But of course, we have to talk about the show stealers that people really were excited for, and that is the return of the main protagonists of both Xenoblade 1 and 2. And that is my man, my boy, Shulk, my goat, Shulk. And yeah, Shulk is back, and he's a kind swordsman who wields a great red sword, which is of course the Monado Rex, and due to previous battles, his right arm has been replaced with prosthetic, and he can only just wield his sword with just only his left hand. And from his stance and from his whole arm thing, he's similar to what Dunban been. That's Dunban right over there. So yeah, that's really interesting to see that Shulk is taking some cues from Dunban. And obviously has his Monado Rex, and I have to say, he looks really awesome. And what will happen to, his arm, and the fact that now he has longer hair is really interesting. But of course, let's talk about the Chad himself, the man who's got the biggest glow up ever, and that is Rex himself, protagonist of Xenoblade 2. And yeah, he's a powerful swordsman who wields dual great swords. He's flexible and frank, and alongside Shulk, leads the Liberators. He lost his left eye in battle, and yeah, his design looks absolutely good. He sported a beard, and yeah, it does seem that if we look at, like, say, the teaser for Wave 4, is that they obviously had, their arms and their eyes still intact. So it seems, I guess, somewhere after that, like it could be somewhere on the beginning, that they lost their parts in a way. And of course, he's wielding both, Pyra and Mithra's swords, which absolutely looks awesome. Obviously, we have more, and also we also have, of course, return of N and Z. But we also have Alvis, obviously this mysterious entity who's obviously what many are theorizing to be the actual, actual console A. Like, I think A is sort of related to Alvis, and Alvis is sort of like, the progenitor, like the new god in a way. And he's sort of what is the one who proclaimed the beginning and the end, while Z is all around being the end. And we also have just interesting tidbits, like on how this Mobius guy was able to merge two Florences and just to use their power. And honestly, we also see some other key aspects, like Colony 9 returning from Xenoblade 1, which is absolutely looking good. And obviously, we also have some theories, like one example from my good friend Maggie Jones-Lute, AvengerMags, who showed that these characters, the cast of Future Redeemed, are indeed the founders and two mentors, with Shulk likely representing House Reed, who's the mentor, and Rex representing House Cassini, who's also mentor, and then we have Matthew, who represents House Van Damme, Niall represents House Doyle, Glimmer for House Rhodes, and Nicole and House Ortiz, which, yeah, I do think these are likely indeed the founders. But obviously the one missing, of course, is A, who, again, I think was no surprise that she might obviously be the console A. But there's also another thing about this interesting thing and this chart right here. And obviously we see things like, who's in the city, who's from Kivas and Agnes, and who is, like Mobius, and who's like Matthew's partner, May. But the interesting thing is the very reliable thing, and we have his Liberator, Shulk and Rex, and what's that next to Rex is Riku, that mysterious Nopon who may seem common but knows a little too much than from what we know. Like, what is Riku cooking? Like, seriously, there's even one screenshot of him with Nicole and Shulk, and it's like, who are you? Like, who really is Riku? Obviously, other than that, but we have this sick new artwork of our main cast, and it looks like a fusion between Tanto from Xenoblade 2 and President Island from Xenoblade 1, which looks pretty cool. We also got a new battle theme, which absolutely kicks ass. Like, oh my god, the new song is absolutely amazing. Like, honestly, the composers for Xenoblade just really kick ass no matter what, and I absolutely love that. But there's also one thing that has been returning in this DLC that may ruffle some feathers from Xenoblade fans, and that is the community mechanic. Now I did say in one of my predictions is I hope I never see this thing ever again, cause while it was a good idea in concept to, of course, learn more about the characters, it unfortunately had the stupidest idea of creating a roadblock where you couldn't really progress through the story. So with this, and hopefully with MonolithSoft being able to, take feedback and improve things, like obviously Xenoblade 3 took some feedback from Xenoblade 2 and improved upon it, so I hope that's the same case with a Future Redeemed, where it takes what didn't work well with Torna and actually improve upon it. So we'll have to see if this community thing in Future Redeemed actually works. But yeah, aside from that, everything looks absolutely wonderful. There were so many things to go on that I couldn't even process, and yeah, it just absolutely looks really dope, and I just can't wait, because this will be the actual end of the whole Xenoblade Saga, the whole end. Like, everything that started from Xenoblade 1 will end in Future Redeemed, and this will be, Takashi's vision finally completed after all these years, after he got meddled with Square and Bamco on how Xenogears and Xenosaga turned out. This will be finally his chance to truly shine, and honestly I can't wait. Guys, that's it for me. So what do you guys think? Are you guys truly excited for Xenoblade Future Redeemed? Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Mad Kaiser out.